Hello everyone, welcome back to this session. Today we are going to talk of part 2, chapter 3, CBSE grade 6. The name of the chapter is In the Earliest Cities. So today we are going to focus more on houses, drains and streets, the life in the city and new crafts in the city. So let's see how much can we manage to cover in today's session. So I'm going to hit straight for the first topic, houses, drains and streets. So you guys would be surprised to know that back then, during the Harappa period, the houses, they were either one-storied or they could even be two-storied houses like this. And generally there was an open space that was called the courtyard. And we happened to have rooms around that open space. Like nowadays you find it there in the hotels. So there's an open space and around that we used to have the rooms. Most of the houses, they had bathrooms, a separate room designated as the bathing space, and they used to get water from the wells. Isn't that very interesting? And apart from this, the drainage system was quite interesting. They maintained holes to check, to inspect the cleanliness of drains like this. And all the drains, they connected somewhere smaller to the bigger ones, running through all the streets. And they had these inspection holes. Can you see this inspection hole? They had that. The houses, drains, and the lightning system in the streets, it was A1. It seems like all of this was done at the same time. Now, the life in the city might have been very amazing for the people. Now, how did they live in the city? We'll try to focus more on this because we know more about their houses, cleanliness. Even the drains were tilted, the bathrooms were tilted so that water could flow from a high to a lower section. So the Harappan city, I'll show you there on the map. Here. This city was considered to be a very busy place. Why? Because like nowadays people all are employed in different activities. Back then people were also involved in different activities, and there might have been some person who might be telling them to get stuff from distant lands. Maybe some valuable stuff, some beautiful stuff. So those people were rulers. Not that the seat was hereditary, but these people used to send some other people to different lands to get stuff like metals, to get stuff like precious stones, and even ornamental stuff. Apart from this, we had some people whom we call as scribes, who knew how to write. So they used to prepare seals like this. If you see seal, it is more like a stamp. The Harappan period had this steel back then, so it was this more like a stamp that we use, more like a symbol that we designate, more like an emblem, more like that insignia that we say. So we had scribes. I'll show you how scribes used to work. If you see this section, you'll get to know how does the scribe work. See? So the scribes, these people used to live right within the city and they knew how to prepare these seals. Wonderful. And some of these seals have survived, which has made it very possible for us to study what happened in the past. There were also many other craftsmen who were involved into stuff, making very beautiful ornaments. They also made some terracotta toys. I'll show you how does terracotta look like. So this is terracotta toys that they made. So the kids used to play with these terracotta toys. It's a fine clay that they use, and out of which they shape different kind of sculptures or the objects that children used to play. So what happened back then was people used to travel to distant lands. People knew how to write. People knew how to survive. There were different craftsmen back then. Wow. An organized system. The beads were also found. How this happened is the archaeologists, they found some very special stones, they found very special shell being used, metals, especially the copper, bronze, gold, and silver. So if I talk of the life of the city, there were many crafts in which two people were involved. It could be into activity of writing, seals preparation, terracotta toys, or making of these lovely ornaments. They even used to make ornaments, they used to make very beautiful vessels. All was in use. Blades was being made by them. All those bead making industry was quite prevalent at that time. So if you have a closer look at this seal, these seals were basically made up out of made of stone. They were carved on a stone, which usually used to have an animal carved on them. And later, we happen to see, apart from seal making, these people were also employed into very basic stuff that is called beautiful, beautiful pots that they designed, especially black color pots that they designed. So I think all in all, people back then, they knew how to survive. We even find the evidence of cotton at this place, Mehergarh. If you see this place, we find the evidence of cotton. Not that we found a cloth in specific, but this piece that people used around 7,000 years ago. We found evidence of cotton which was attached to a silver vase. Yes, here. People might have used and kept it somewhere. So this was found, and if probably they might be using cotton, so of course there might be some use of spindle wools. It's like a pulley that you use. It's circular in shape. People use this spindle wools. They use terracotta. They used to spin thread. So this gives me an idea that these people who lived in this area, the Indus Valley civilization, they were some kind of specialist. They used to travel to distant lands, they used to get the raw material, and they used to carve things out of it. Maybe beads, maybe terracotta toys, maybe ornaments, maybe blades, vessels. The cotton growth was there, proper drainage, street lighting. Wow, what could one ask for? Probably men, women, people of all the genders might have been some kind of specialist back then. Now, since we know what was the end product, so we are going to focus more on the raw material. In search of raw material, which all places did they have to travel? So there were farmers. There might have been some kind of herders who could easily get access to wood, some ores back then, to produce something that's called a finished product. Cotton was used, raw material was used, like that was locally available at Harappan site. We used to find copper there, very near to the Harappan site, tin, gold, silver, some precious metals. They had to get it from distant land and then refine it. But there was some stuff that was locally available. Wood, ores, some kind of metals. They could have been locally available, but this copper, tin, gold, silver, they had to get all this from distant lands. We find the evidence of copper in present day Rajasthan. And they even used to get it from Oman, not Onam, Oman, which is a place in West Asia. very near to the Arabian Peninsula. So people used to travel through present day Afghanistan. I'll show you here. So people used to find this as the perfect route, and they used to travel to Afghanistan, Iran, and even we find somewhere here in Karnataka, we find the evidence of very precious stones that they used to get even from present day Gujarat, some part from Afghanistan and Iran. So these were most important places from there where they used to get precious stones that they could use. Isn't that very interesting? So we've talked a lot about the life of the people, the streets, the drainage, the housing pattern, the specialists living there, and the kind of activity these people were involved. From where these people used to get the raw material: Afghanistan, present day Iran, Oman, one of the country in Middle East, Gujarat as the state from India, Karnataka, and even Rajasthan. Not to forget Rajasthan. So these people might have been involved in some kind of farming activities. That's for sure. So let's have a closer look as to what these people used to do when we talk of food. Many people, of course, lived in cities and many lived in the rural area. That's called the countryside. So these people who lived in the countryside, they were involved in farming, or they used to rear the animals. And these people used to serve the people living in the city who were specialists, who were craftsmen, who were scribes, who were the rulers. So like now we have the present system where people living in the farm and this rural area used to are in a position to supply stuff to the people living in the city. Back then also the same kind of scenario existed. So these Harappan people, they knew the art to grow food, and they used to grow different crops like wheat, barley, pulses, peas, rice, linseeds, mustard. All these crops they used to grow, including sesame. We get oil from this particular crop. And this oil, once it was produced, they used to, in the meantime, they also used to use different kind of tools, especially a very famous plow is used to dig the earth. We use it to plant the seeds. Back then, this area didn't have enough rainfall, so definitely they used to depend on the sources of irrigation. Can you imagine the life? It was the same like we have today. They lived in that modern age, I think. They were quite civilized and they knew the art. So that means we've got a lot to learn from these ancient people, especially the Harappan people. Isn't that true? Isn't that correct? They knew the art of rearing cattle, sheep, buffalo, goat. They had special pasture area where at times they used to go and settle themselves, and during the dry season they had to move to another location. So we'll study in detail about this in the next session. In case you like the session, please hit subscribe and do leave in a comment. Thank you.